If there's too much going on in the set, swimmers are going to struggle. If there's not enough going on in a set, swimmers aren't going to be challenged. Let's talk about how to avoid both situations. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. When you're writing a set, especially when you're introducing new ideas, it can be difficult to know what your swimmers are ready for. And that is precisely the question I was asked recently. How do you know how much to include in a set to challenge them without overwhelming them? It's an awesome question because finding the sweet spot of challenge is exactly how we help swimmers improve. The more we're right in the middle, the more we're going to help swimmers go fast. And unfortunately, it can be a tight window. And when working with a large group, that window isn't exactly the same for everybody. If it's too easy, they're not going to learn very much, they're going to get bored, and they're going to disengage. If it's too hard, they're not going to learn very much, they're going to get frustrated, and they're going to disengage. It's all about finding the sweet spot consistently and reliably. Here's how I try to do it. The first concept is to be conservative to start. If you're not 100% sure, do less. You do not want to set them up to fail, so always try to set them up to be successful. In many cases, it's better to be 50% too easy than 1% too hard. Success breeds success, so let them be good and let them continue to get better. To do that, reduce the number of elements in the set, how many tasks they have, how many different things are going on. Make those elements simpler, and then demand less from a performance perspective. The reason I like to take this approach is because once they're successful, it's very, very easy to make it harder. And you can do that within the day, within the workout, within the set, once you see that swimmers are successful. Just as well, the next time they do something similar, you can just increase the challenge then. Give them somewhere to go, space to improve, and then allow them to continue getting better as you continue to escalate the challenge. I always try to give myself the option to increase the challenge during the set if it looks like that's what they're ready for. If you start on the easy side, it's simple enough to add another component to the set or make those components that are already present a little bit more difficult. Just make the adjustment and go from there. There's nothing written in stone, and if they're killing it, if they're being really successful, almost too good, just increase the challenge and make it a little bit more difficult. That's one reason why I like to start a little conservatively, because it's very easy to solve that problem. And increasing the challenge lets swimmers feel success, where having to scale it back makes it feel like a failure. Next step is to make notes and be ready to increase the challenge next time. The more aware you are of what actually happens during the set as compared to what you expected to happen during the set, the better you get at predicting what swimmers will be able to do. Personally, I like to write down my observations, just a couple simple sentences, because for me, that really helps me remember what happened and how it went. I almost never look at those notes again, but for whatever reason, when I write something down, it kind of gets locked into my brain and I'm able to remember what happened. So you can do whatever you need to do to go through that process of reflection so you can get better at identifying what swimmers are ready to be able to handle. So whenever they're really good, you can think about what the next step would be and then take that next step whenever you're working on the same things again. The more frequently I reflect on what happened as compared to what I thought would happen, the better I get at predicting what will happen. And the better you are at predicting what will happen, the better you get at finding that sweet spot, that middle ground of optimal challenge. And if you're always conservative at first, it's just a matter of slowly increasing the challenge to meet them where they're at. Another important strategy I use is to make sure that they're good at the individual pieces in isolation before I start combining them. So if I'm writing a set and I'm combining different strategies and different tools, I want them to be familiar with and effective with each of those pieces before I start putting it all together. So let's say they're doing 425s, underwater recovery, they're descending those 1 to 4, they have to take the same stroke count, and they have a parachute, and they have upside down paddles. So obviously there's a lot going on there. So even though that's a super simple set in terms of 425s, there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot that they need to be good at in order to put it all together. First of all, they have to be decent at that drill, underwater recovery. If that's the first time they're doing that drill, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do all the extra stuff. They also have to be comfortable with using parachutes, with using resistance. Likewise, they have to be comfortable with using upside down paddles. If they've never done that before, doing it with all these other pieces might not be the best place to try it. They have to know stroke counts. They have to be good at using stroke counts. They also have to be good at descending without changing their stroke count. If they've never done that before, it's probably not the best place to try to use it. So they have to be comfortable with the different pieces, and preferably they've used at least a couple of those in some combination before. For instance, they've used upside down paddles and a parachute before. Or maybe they've done the drill where they descended at the same stroke count before. Or they descended at the same stroke count with a parachute or upside down paddles, or maybe even both. If they haven't done those sort of things, it doesn't make sense to put that all together. They're simply not going to be ready for it, and it's going to be somewhat of a disaster. Stick with the elements and make sure that they're successful with those elements, and then you can start to combine them over time. And you can start to combine them in different ways, working up to the point where you can combine them all together. As you go through that process, if they're successful with something, you can add in another element. And over time, they get to the point where they can start to handle a lot of different things in a lot of different ways because they've been exposed to it gradually and patiently, and they've been successful with it the whole way through. Not only do they become skilled, they become confident in their ability to perform, and that's exactly what we're trying to develop. So play it safe, start with where they're at, let them be successful, and then go from there. A similar topic is figuring out how much variability there should be within a set. If you want to learn more about that, check out this video here.